My husband said our daughter is better than I am in bed. That's what my best friend told me over the phone that Sunday afternoon. And that's the sentence that shattered my marriage, my faith, and, for a while, myself. Before I continue, do well to click the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. I remember the moment in snapshots. The faint hum of the washing machine, the smell of detergent, sunlight sliding across the kitchen tiles. I was folding a white bedsheet, one of those simple, quiet chores that trick you into believing your life is under control. My phone buzzed on the counter. Lila's name flashed across the screen. I didn't think much of it. Lila called often. Sometimes to gossip, sometimes to vent about her ex, sometimes to fill the silence. I liked her company, or thought I did. She had that kind of charm that made people trust her. She listened with the patience of someone who'd already rehearsed the perfect advice. "Hey, you busy?" she asked when I picked up. "Just laundry," I said. "What's up?" There was a pause, just long enough to stir unease. "Martha, I don't even know how to say this, but if I were you, I'd talk to Caleb." I laughed lightly. "About what? Did he forget your birthday again?" She didn't laugh back. "I'm serious." Her tone changed. Heavy. Intentional. I felt my shoulders tighten. "What's wrong?" Another pause. Then she sighed. "Promise me you won't freak out." "Lila, I just think you deserve to know what kind of things he says when you're not around." Cold wave rose in my stomach. "What things?" Then she said it. Word for word. "He told someone that your daughter Ava is better than you in bed." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Maybe she'd said better than you in class, or better than you at baking, or better than you at something. Anything else. But no. The sentence hung there, grotesque, precise, and final. "Lila," I whispered. "What did you just say?" "I didn't even want to tell you," she said quickly. "But I couldn't keep it from you. You're my friend. You have the right to know what kind of man he is." And then, as if mercy existed in her voice, she added, "Please don't tell him I said anything." I just couldn't stay quiet. I can still hear the faint tremor she added to her tone, just enough to sound like she was protecting me, not poisoning me. When the call ended, I didn't cry right away. I didn't shout or collapse. I just stood there, frozen, the phone still warm in my hand. The washing machine beeped, signaling the end of a cycle. I didn't move. My reflection in the kitchen window looked unfamiliar, stiff, pale, and stunned. It wasn't just what she'd said. It was the impossibility of it. The sickness of it. My husband, my Caleb, who'd built pillow forts with Ava when she was 5, who'd driven her to every soccer practice, who cried silently the day she left for college. Saying that? I felt my mind split in two. One part insisting it can't be true, and the other whispering, but what if it is? That whisper is what kills you, not the lie itself. For the next hour, I wandered through the house like a ghost. I touched the framed photos on the walls. Caleb holding Ava at her high school graduation. Me in a red dress, laughing at something he'd whispered. All those images of safety and belonging now looked staged. The air grew heavy. My heart beat too loud. Every memory turned suspicious. Had I missed signs? The nights he came home late. The sudden silence when I entered a room. The way he'd been distant lately, lost in thought. I poured myself a glass of water. My hand trembled so badly it spilled. Then came the nausea. Deep, violent. I ran to the sink and dry heaved. I remember whispering to myself, no, he wouldn't. He couldn't. But Lila's words clung to me like oil. Impossible to wash off. When Caleb came home that evening, I was sitting in the dark. He opened the door, humming, dropped his keys on the table. "Hey, honey," he said, casual. Then he saw my face. "You okay?" I didn't answer. My throat burned. He frowned. "Martha." That was when it burst out of me. "How could you say that?" He blinked, confused. "Say what?" "Don't act innocent." I stood up, shaking. "How could you say something so disgusting?" Whoa, hold on, what's going on?" "Lila told me." I screamed. "She said you told someone our daughter was better than me in bed." The color drained from his face. What? Don't you dare deny it. His voice hardened. That's insane. I never said anything like that. She heard you. She's lying. She wouldn't lie about something like that. Wouldn't she? We stared at each other. Two people suddenly foreign, caught in the wreckage of a single sentence. He ran his hands through his hair, pacing. I don't even know how to respond to that. How could you think I'd say something so vile? Because she's my friend, I said, my voice cracking. And she told me the truth. He stopped pacing. Looked at me, hurt flashing across his face. And I'm your husband. For 15 years. Doesn't that mean anything? That question sliced me open. But anger was the only thing holding me together. Apparently not as much as I thought. He stared at me for a long time, chest rising and falling, then whispered, "If you really believe I said that, I don't know what else to say to you." And just like that he left the room. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. Every creak of the house sounded like a confession. I replayed the phone call 1,000 times, trying to hear something. A pause, a hesitation that might prove it false. But the more I thought, the more tangled it became. By 3 a.m., I was trembling from exhaustion. My thoughts looped. Why would he say that? How could she know? Who else heard? Shame began to bloom, hot and heavy, the kind that doesn't have words. Felt dirty. The next morning I couldn't look at him. We moved around the house like strangers. He poured coffee. I pretended to read emails. Ava called from college that afternoon. "Hey Mom. You sound weird. Everything okay?" I swallowed. "Yeah, sweetie. Just tired." Hearing her voice cracked something inside me. I couldn't stop picturing the lie. Those words, attaching themselves to her. I wanted to scream, to tell her everything, to demand she come home and tell me it wasn't true. But I didn't. Because what kind of mother would that make me? After we hung up, I went into the bathroom and sobbed so hard I thought my lungs would tear. The days blurred together after that. Caleb tried talking. I avoided him. He tried touching my hand. I pulled away. He asked me to look him in the eyes. I couldn't. The house grew cold. Not from weather but from silence. Lila kept calling. Checking in. Her voice was soft, caring, perfectly measured. "How are you holding up?" she'd ask. "Have you decided what you're going to do?" Sometimes I thought I heard satisfaction buried beneath her sympathy, but I ignored it. I needed someone on my side. "I don't know what to believe anymore," I told her once. She sighed. "Men can be cruel, Martha. They say things behind our backs that would break us if we heard them. I just didn't want you to live in ignorance." And like a fool I thanked her. One evening, Caleb came into the living room and sat across from me. "We can't go on like this," he said quietly. I didn't answer. "Martha, I swear to you I never said anything like that. Never. Love you. I love Ava. This is sick." Then why would she lie? He hesitated. "Maybe she's not the friend you think she is." That made me snap. "Don't you dare drag her into this. She's the only person who's been honest with me." "Honest?" His voice rose for the first time. "She's tearing us apart. You already did that yourself." He went silent then. His eyes glassy, jaw tight. He stood up and walked out. Not just from the room this time but from the house. The sound of the door closing echoed like a verdict. I didn't know where he went that night, and I didn't care. Or told myself I didn't. I sat alone, clutching a blanket, rocking back and forth. That sentence, the one that started everything, replayed endlessly in my mind, each repetition dulling meaning and sharpening pain. My husband said our daughter is better than I am in bed. The ugliness of it hollowed me out. At some point I started believing not just that it might be true but that I somehow deserved it. That I wasn't enough. Not as a wife, not as a woman, not as anything. It's frightening how easily the human heart can be convinced of its own worthlessness when poisoned by betrayal. The next morning Lila came over unannounced. She brought muffins. She hugged me like a widow. "Have you heard from him?" she asked, feigning concern. He left last night. She sighed theatrically. I'm so sorry, honey. You don't deserve this. Her words were comforting, but her eyes. I don't know how to explain it. There was something there. A flicker, quick and predatory, like satisfaction hidden behind sympathy. But I was too broken to see clearly. She stayed for hours, listening, nodding, advising. At one point she said softly, "You'll come out stronger. You always do." And somehow that hurt even more. That night, I found myself scrolling through old messages between Caleb and me. Birthdays, inside jokes, photos of vacations, ordinary love. Was that all fake? Or had something died slowly without me noticing? I stared at a picture of him laughing in the sunlight. His hand around mine. It looked real. Surreal. For the first time in days, I doubted Lila. Just a flicker of doubt, but it was there. I barely slept that night. When dawn came, it didn't feel like morning. Just a dull, gray continuation of everything that had already broken. The house smelled like the muffins Lila left on the counter. Sickly sweet and foreign. I couldn't stand to touch them. Caleb's truck was still gone. The garage felt empty without it, like a missing tooth you keep running your tongue over. I made coffee I didn't drink. Paste. I kept replaying the argument, trying to hear something in his voice. Guilt, shame, maybe even disgust, but all I'd heard was disbelief. Too clean, too sincere. It scared me that sincerity could sound so real in a liar's mouth. If he was a liar. Around 9, Lila called again. "I didn't wake you, did I?" "No. How are you holding up, sweetheart?" Her voice always softened on that last word, as if I were a wounded pet. "I'm fine," I lied. "Did he come home?" "He hasn't." "Oh honey," a sigh. "I can't believe he'd leave you alone after what he's done." "What he's done." She said it like a confirmed fact, sealing it further into my mind. I didn't even argue. I was too tired to. "I'll come by later," she added quickly. "You shouldn't be alone right now." Almost said no. Something in me wanted quiet space. But the other part, the trembling part that feared silence, said yes. By the time she arrived, I'd showered, changed into clean clothes, and plastered on the face of someone who could still hold a conversation. She hugged me at the door, long and firm, her perfume wrapping around me like a net. She talked while moving through the house as if it were hers, straightening a cushion here, opening the fridge there. "I can't believe him," she kept saying. "Men like that don't even realize how much damage they cause." I wanted to believe she was angry for me. I needed someone to be. We sat at the kitchen table. She sipped coffee. I stared at the mug in front of me. "What exactly did he say?" I asked suddenly. She froze. "What do you mean? When you heard him, how did he say it?" She blinked, the tiniest flicker of hesitation before her expression softened again. "Just like I told you, sweetheart." He said it to one of his friends, kind of joking but not really. I was there. I heard it clear as day. Who was the friend? "Oh, just one of his work buddies. I don't remember his name." She waved it off quickly, but something small and sharp snagged inside me. Caleb didn't have work buddies. His business was small. He handled most contracts himself. He didn't socialize much. Still, I nodded as if satisfied because doubt felt dangerous. When she left, the house exhaled. The silence that followed was almost kind. Late afternoon. Caleb came home. I heard the truck pull in, the door shut softly. His footsteps hesitating at the threshold. My chest tightened. He stood in the doorway looking 10 years older than he had 3 days ago. "Can we talk?" I didn't move. "About what?" "About everything," he said. "Please." We sat on opposite ends of the couch. He looked at his hands, not me. "I don't know what she told you or why, but it isn't true. You have to believe me." I folded my arms. "She heard you." He shook his head slowly. "No. She wants you to think she did. She has no reason to lie." He looked up then, straight into my eyes. "Doesn't she?" The way he said it made me flinch. What are you implying? She's been around a lot lately, he said carefully. Too much. You don't see it, but she's been different. Flirty. Crossing lines. I laughed, a dry sound. That's ridiculous. He rubbed his forehead. Martha, I'm telling you the truth. I pushed her away last week when she tried to. He stopped himself. When she tried to what? He hesitated. Never mind. You won't believe me anyway. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Say it. She tried to kiss me. The words sliced through the room. I stood up, shaking. You expect me to believe that now? That she made all this up because you rejected her? Do you know how insane that sounds? I know exactly how it sounds, he said quietly. But it's what happened. The silence that followed was unbearable. I turned away, staring at the wall, because if I looked at him, I might start believing him, and that would mean I'd been cruel to the wrong person. He left again, this time without slamming the door. That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after midnight. The house was dark except for the small lamp by the window. I kept thinking about his face when he said she tried to kiss me. He looked tired, not defensive. Could Lila have done that? Well, she was my friend. My only real friend. And yet, a memory surfaced. Weeks ago at a barbecue, I'd gone inside to fetch drinks and found her leaning a little too close to Caleb, laughing softly. I'd brushed it off as nothing then, but now it flickered differently. Another fragment. The way she sometimes complimented him in front of me, too casually. Caleb's so strong. Caleb's such a good man. I pressed my palms to my eyes, whispering, stop it, as if my brain were betraying me by remembering. Days drifted by. Caleb stayed at his brother's. Eva texted, worried. I told her we were fine. Lies wrapped in concern, just like Lila's had been. Lila kept visiting. She brought food, books, stories about moving on. Once, while pouring wine, she said lightly, you know, sometimes when a man's guilty, he flips the story. Blames someone else. Classic deflection. I nodded, but something about the timing of her reassurance felt too polished, like she was patching cracks she'd already mapped out. Later that night when she left, I noticed she'd taken a moment longer than usual to glance at the family photo on the mantel. Caleb, me, Ava. A small, assessing smile had touched her lips before she turned away. The next morning I couldn't shake it. It wasn't grief anymore. It was suspicion. By Thursday I decided to test the story. While Lila was at my house, I asked, what did he say exactly? The same words. She frowned slightly. Of course. Why? I just keep hearing them in my head, I said softly. I want to be sure. She repeated them, slower this time, as if reciting lines she'd memorized. Your daughter's better than your wife in bed. The phrasing was identical to before. Too perfect. Real conversations don't replay like that. They shift. They blur. I forced a smile. Thanks. I just needed to hear it again. Her eyes flicked over me, studying, like she was checking whether the poison had settled properly. It had. For now. That evening I called Caleb. He answered on the second ring, voice cautious. Martha. I just need to know, I said. Did you ever? I couldn't finish the question. No, he said firmly. Never. Not in words, not in thought. Never. Silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, I started crying. Not from anger, but from exhaustion. I don't know what's real anymore, I whispered. I know, he said. But you will. A few hours later, while tidying the living room, my phone buzzed with a message from Lila. Hope you're okay. Remember, don't let him manipulate you. I'm here if you need me. I stared at it for a long time before typing back. Thank you. I'll be fine. But I didn't send it. I deleted the message instead. Then I sat there, holding my phone, breathing slowly, realizing that somewhere between her first lie and this new message, something inside me had shifted. Doubt was no longer the enemy, it was survival. That night I didn't turn on any lights. The house felt honest in the dark, stripped of pretense, stripped of the neat comfort daylight fakes for you. I sat by the window watching the street lamps blur through the mist and thought about how fast trust can die. Lila's voice had started to sound like static in my head. Every sweetheart, every concerned sigh, suddenly replayed out of tune. There were gaps in her story now. Small, invisible fractures like hairline cracks in glass that would shatter with a touch. Still, I wasn't ready to break the glass. Not yet. I wanted proof. Something solid to hold up against the fear that I was turning into a paranoid fool. 2 days later I found it by accident. I was cleaning the kitchen counter, mind half empty, when my phone buzzed. A message from Caleb. "Can we talk? Please. I'll wait if you're not ready, but I can't live in this silence anymore." I stared at the message until the letters blurred. I should have ignored it. But something inside me, maybe the part of me that still remembered the man I married, typed back before I could stop myself. "Come tomorrow evening. We'll talk." I didn't tell Lila. I wanted to see what would happen if she didn't know every detail of my life. The next morning she showed up anyway. No text, no call. Just the sound of her car door, the click of heels on the driveway, and that smile at the door that had once meant comfort but now felt invasive. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, brushing past me before I could invite her in. The lie was casual, practiced. She perched on the arm of the couch, studying me. "You look better today," she said. "Did you sleep?" "A little." "Good. You need rest. Don't let him drain you anymore." She leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly. "He hasn't tried to call, has he?" My heart gave a small, traitorous jolt. "No," I lied. Her smile returned, faint but sharp. "Good. You're stronger without him." Something about that made me cold. "You're stronger without him. Not you'll be okay, not I'm here for you, just that." As if she were quietly crossing him off a list. She stayed an hour, filling the air with advice I didn't ask for. When she finally left, I locked the door behind her and pressed my forehead against it, breathing hard. That was the first time I realized I was afraid of her. Caleb arrived the next evening right on time. When I opened the door, he looked exhausted, not just from the fight, but from carrying the weight of something he hadn't done. "Martha," he said quietly. "Come in." We sat at the kitchen table. The silence between us was thick but not hostile, more like shared grief. "I need you to listen," he said. "Just for a few minutes. No interruptions." He nodded. He took a deep breath. "Lila came by my office 2 weeks ago. She said she wanted to talk about you, said you'd been stressed and she was worried. I told her I appreciated it but that we were fine." She laughed and said, "You must be a saint, Caleb. Most men would have given up by now." Then she touched my arm. I moved away. She looked embarrassed, said it was a joke. But the next day, she showed up again. He paused, watching my face. "I told her not to come back," he continued. "That's when she got angry. Said something about how you didn't deserve my loyalty. I didn't think much of it until now." He leaned forward, eyes wet but steady. "Martha, whatever she told you, it's poison. And she's feeding it to you because she wants you alone." The words hung between us, heavy with possibility. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But belief required trust, and trust had been the first casualty of that phone call. So instead I whispered, "How do I know you're not twisting this to save yourself?" He nodded slowly. "You don't. But you know me." After he left, I sat there long after midnight, tracing circles on the table with my fingertip. You know me. Did I? I thought about the man who built shelves for my art supplies, who left notes in my lunchbox for years, who cried when we buried the family dog. I thought about the way he looked at me the first night we moved into this house, tired but certain. Could that man say something so cruel about our daughter? Could he look at me every day and carry that kind of sickness inside him? The answer kept rising, quiet but firm, no. I pressed my palms to my eyes. "What have I done?" I whispered. And somewhere far away, a new kind of fear took shape. Not the fear of being betrayed, but of being the betrayer. The next morning I woke with purpose. Not peace but purpose. I decided to test Lila one more time. Called her. "Hey," I said, forcing a tremor into my voice. "Can you come over? I think Caleb's going to try to spin things." Her tone sharpened immediately. "Of course, sweetheart. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She arrived in 15. When she walked in, I was sitting on the couch, a mug of untouched tea in my hands. "I don't know what to believe anymore," I said softly. "He swears you're lying." Her eyes flashed just for a moment. Then she masked it with concern. "That's exactly what I warned you about. He's manipulating you." I nodded slowly. "Maybe. But I want to be sure. Can you tell me again how it happened?" She frowned. "Martha, why keep torturing yourself with details?" "Because I need closure." She sighed but relented. "Fine." He was standing near the truck outside the cafe, talking to some guy from work. "I told you this, and I overheard him say it." "The same guy from before?" "Yes." "What cafe?" She blinked. "What? You said outside the cafe. Which one?" Her mouth opened then closed. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." She hesitated then said, "The one on Maple." "Maple. The cafe that shut down 2 years ago." Something inside me went still. I smiled faintly. "Right. I remember that place." She relaxed, misreading me. "See. It's good you're remembering things. Healing even." She talked for a while after that, but her voice faded into background noise. I could only hear my heartbeat, slow, steady, and certain. She left soon after, telling me to call if Caleb tried anything. The moment the door shut, I sank onto the couch and started to shake, not from fear but from clarity. The lie had finally shown its seams. That night I called Caleb again. "I need to see you," I said. "Tomorrow." His voice caught. "Does that mean?" "It means I think I'm ready to listen." When I hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my own gullibility press down like a stone. I had let someone else's poison live in my home, in my head, in my marriage. And the worst part, I had invited it in myself. But tomorrow I decided I would start cleaning it out. I didn't sleep the night before our meeting. Sleep required trust, in your own mind, in your heart's ability to rest, and I didn't have any left. I spent the hours before dawn cleaning things that weren't dirty. The shelves, the sink, the edges of picture frames. It was easier than thinking. When morning came, the light felt too sharp, as if the world was seeing me clearly for the first time in weeks. Caleb arrived right on time again. I noticed how careful he was with everything, how softly he shut the car door, how he paused before ringing the bell. When I opened the door, we just looked at each other. The silence between us was different this time. It wasn't hostile or empty. It was waiting. We sat at the same kitchen table where we'd shared hundreds of breakfasts and late-night talks, but this time it felt like neutral ground, a place neither of us owned anymore. "I need to ask you something," I began. "And I need you to answer me without trying to protect me." He nodded. "All right. Did you ever say anything about me and Emma?" His face broke. Not into tears, not into anger, but into something deeper, like disbelief at the cruelty of the world. "Martha," he said quietly. "Never. Never. I don't even know how anyone could make that up." I watched him closely. His hands were steady. His voice didn't shake. And for the first time in a long while, I felt that old sense of grounding return, the one that used to come from simply hearing him speak. I told him everything. The call, the words, the panic, Lila's calm explanations, her insistence that she was only trying to help. I watched his face harden, his eyes turning to flint when I said her name. "She called you?" he asked. "Yes." "When?" 3 weeks ago. She said she overheard you talking about us." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling. "That explains the weird call I got from her before that." I frowned. "What call?" "She rang me at work. Said you'd been distant and she was worried you might hurt yourself. Asked if I could check on you that night. I told her we'd had some arguments but you were fine." She sounded almost disappointed. The pieces started falling into place. Every strange conversation, every time Lila's concern, had arrived right after something she shouldn't have known. It wasn't worry. It was control. Caleb rubbed his face, eyes closed. I should have told you then. But I didn't want to make things worse. You thought she was harmless, I said quietly. He nodded. I thought she was your friend. I let that word hang in the air, friend, and realized how broken it sounded now. The silence stretched between us again. But this time I wasn't afraid of it. I believed her, I said finally. Every word. I looked at you and saw a monster because she said I should. He reached across the table, hesitated, then let his hand rest palm up near mine. An offering, not a demand. I don't blame you, he said. She's clever. She knew exactly what to say. I stared at his hand but didn't take it. Not yet. I still don't understand why. What would she get from this? He gave a small, bitter laugh. People like her don't need much of a reason. Sometimes they just want to see what they can destroy. His words sank deep. Because I'd seen that kind of hunger before. Not in her eyes, but in the way she listened when I spoke about my insecurities, the way she filed them away like ammunition. After he left that day, I went into the guest room and pulled out the box of old letters and photos I'd kept over the years, little pieces of our life together. I wasn't looking for nostalgia. I was looking for perspective. Every picture told the same quiet truth. There was no hatred there. Just fatigue, distance, miscommunication, the normal erosion of time. But never contempt. The story Lila spun required a different kind of man, one who sneered when he thought of me, who carried disgust instead of disappointment. That man had never existed. And slowly, painfully, I started forgiving myself for believing he did. Later that evening, my daughter Emma came home from college for the weekend. She hugged me in the hallway, unaware of the storm she'd been made part of. "Mom, you look tired," she said. "Are you okay?" I smiled weakly. "Just been a rough few weeks." We made dinner together, and for the first time in what felt like forever, the house smelled like laughter and garlic and burnt toast. Caleb joined us halfway through, tentative but welcome. Emma didn't seem to notice the tension, or maybe she did and decided to give us space to heal quietly. When she left for a friend's place that night, I and Caleb sat outside under the weak porch light. The air between us had softened. "I still don't know what happens next," I admitted. "Neither do I," he said. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe starting from not knowing is better than starting from a lie." We sat there for a long time saying nothing, just breathing in the fragile peace that comes after chaos. The next morning my phone buzzed again. Layla. I stared at her name on the screen until it went dark. Then it rang again. Finally I answered. "Martha, thank God," she said breathlessly. "I've been trying to reach you. I just heard that Caleb's been." "Stop," I said. The word came out calm, almost gentle, but it sliced through her sentence like glass. "What?" "I know," I said simply. Silence. Then a light, nervous laugh. "Know what, sweetheart? That you lied." There was another pause, longer this time, sharper. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter," I said. "What matters is why." Her tone changed. No more warmth, no more pity. Just something cold and calculating. "You really think he didn't say it? You're naive, Martha. Men like him always." "I don't care what you think he said," I interrupted. "I care about what you did. You took something sacred and twisted it because it made you feel powerful." She scoffed. "Oh, please. You were miserable long before I ever said anything. I just gave you the truth you didn't want to face." I let her talk because in that moment I wanted to hear the monster behind the mask. "You've always envied people who look happy," I said softly. "You study them, find the weak spots, then call it honesty when you pry them open. But it's not honesty. It's cruelty dressed up as concern." Her silence on the line was confirmation enough. "I don't hate you, Lila," I said. "But I won't be your project anymore." Then I hung up. When I turned around, Caleb was standing in the doorway, arms folded, expression unreadable. "You heard?" he asked. He nodded. For a long time we just stood there. Then quietly he said, "You handled that better than I ever could." I smiled, a tired, genuine smile. I didn't do it for revenge. I just needed the truth to stop echoing. He stepped closer carefully. "And now, I said, I start learning how to forgive myself." That night when I lay in bed, I realized the house finally sounded normal again. No whispers. No phantom footsteps of doubt. Just the hum of life going on. I didn't know if our marriage would ever be what it once was. But for the first time in months, I knew who the enemy really was. And she wasn't in this house. The strangest part. Felt grateful. Because pain had stripped away everything false, and what was left, fragile, scarred but real, was me. For weeks after the call, silence became my companion again. Not the suffocating kind that filled the house when everything fell apart, but a softer one. The kind that lets you listen to your own breathing and realize you're still alive. It's strange how healing doesn't announce itself. Doesn't come with music or clarity. It arrives quietly, disguised as small choices. Opening the curtains, making breakfast, replying to a message you ignored for too long. That was how it began for me. One quiet choice at a time. The first thing I did was start writing again. Not stories or letters. Just fragments of thought on scraps of paper. Some days they were angry, some forgiving, some confused. But every word I wrote felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had gone missing while I was drowning in someone else's lie. I wrote about guilt. About loneliness. About the sharp embarrassment of realizing how easily I could be manipulated. But I also wrote about resilience. About how love, when it's real, survives even the ugliest storms. Sometimes Caleb found the pages on the table. He never commented, just left them where they were. I think he understood they weren't for him, they were for me. He moved back into the guest room at first. We didn't talk about it. It just happened naturally, a small distance that felt necessary. There was no rush to repair what had been broken. We both knew rushing would only crack it again. At night, I could hear the faint creak of the floor when he passed the hallway. And sometimes our shadows met briefly in the kitchen when one of us couldn't sleep. Those wordless encounters became our language for a while. Cautious, gentle, but real. Emma noticed, of course. One evening she sat me down and said softly, "I don't know what happened, Mom, but I'm glad you and Dad are talking again. It feels lighter here." I smiled at her, heart aching with both pride and sorrow. "We're trying, sweetheart. That's all we can do." And that was true. Trying was all we had. But sometimes trying was enough. I started seeing a therapist not long after. It felt strange at first, explaining to a stranger how I'd believed a friend's lie over my own husband's truth. I expected judgment, maybe pity. But the therapist, a calm woman with kind eyes, only said, "You trusted her because she spoke to your fear. We all have one fear that feels truer than reality." That sentence stayed with me for days. She spoke to my fear. Lila had known mine perfectly. The fear of not being enough. As a wife, as a mother, as a woman. She'd used that fear like a key, unlocking every insecurity I'd buried beneath years of marriage and motherhood. So part of my healing meant facing that fear. Not silencing it, but understanding it. I began small acts of courage. Cooking a meal I loved without worrying if anyone else did. Wearing a dress that made me feel alive instead of appropriate. Saying no when I needed to, even if it disappointed someone. Each act was tiny, almost invisible to anyone watching. But to me they were victories. Proof that I was learning how to live for myself again. Caleb noticed the change. One night, as we cleaned the dishes together, he said quietly, "You seem lighter." I looked at him, unsure how to respond. "Maybe I'm just tired of being heavy," I said. He smiled a little. "Then I'll do my best not to add any more weight." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness either. It was something else, respect. And that, I realized, was what we'd lost before any lie ever entered our home. One afternoon, months later, I found an old photo in a drawer. It was from years ago. The three of us standing in front of the lake during summer. Caleb's arm around me, Emma laughing with her hair in her face. I studied the image for a long time. We didn't look perfect. We looked human. Messy, tired, imperfect, but together. And that's when I understood something. The lie hadn't destroyed us. It had exposed us. It had shown every crack, every unspoken resentment, every silent longing. And while that truth hurt, it also gave us a chance to rebuild honestly. I slid the photo into a frame and placed it on the living room shelf. Not as a reminder of what we were, but of how far we'd come. The following weekend, I took a long walk alone through the nearby park. The air was crisp, the kind that wakes you up from the inside out. Families passed by. Laughter, dogs, the sound of leaves underfoot. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like an observer. I felt like part of the world again. I sat on a bench and closed my eyes. The sun warmed my face, and I thought of everything that had happened. The words, the pain, the silence, the fragile forgiveness still blooming like new grass after a storm. I realized I wasn't waiting for closure anymore. I'd already found it. Not in confrontation. Not in proof. But in peace. Peace with the fact that I'd been broken and had survived anyway. When I got home that evening, Caleb was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. "You cooked," I said, surprised. He chuckled. "Don't get excited. It's just soup." The smell of garlic filled the air, and suddenly, it was like time folded back on itself, to a version of us that still believed in warmth and laughter and ordinary love. He handed me a bowl. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quietly. "I just want to share dinner." I took it from him, smiled softly. "Then let's eat." We sat there side by side, two people who had once lost each other in a fog of lies and pain, and were slowly finding their way back, not through promises but through presence. That night, as I wrote in my journal, I found myself penning a single line that summed up everything I had learned. Sometimes the cruelest thing life can do is make you doubt the love that's always been yours, but the kindest thing is letting you find it again. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and let sleep come easily for the first time in months. This time I didn't dream of lies or fear. I dreamed of quiet mornings and sunlight spilling over a kitchen table, the place where everything had broken and everything had begun to heal. It's been almost a year now. Sometimes I forget how much time has passed, and then a smell, a song, or the way light falls across the kitchen floor reminds me of that old ache. It doesn't sting anymore. It hums quietly like an old scar that aches when it rains. People say time heals everything. That isn't true. Time doesn't heal, it softens. It gives you space to breathe between the memories. It lets you touch the wound without reopening it. Healing, I've learned, isn't erasing what happened. It's learning to live with it gracefully. That's where I am now, learning to live with it. Lila disappeared from my life the way she came into it. Suddenly. After our last call, she tried to reach out once more. A long message about misunderstandings and how she never meant to hurt anyone. I read it, saved it for a week, then deleted it without replying. Forgiveness doesn't always require reconciliation. Some doors are better left closed, even if you've forgiven the person behind them. But I did forgive her, eventually. Not because she deserved it, but because I deserved to stop carrying her in my chest. Anger is a heavy thing. It poisons everything you try to grow around it. I didn't want to live like that anymore. So I let it go piece by piece. And in that letting go, I found something that looked a lot like freedom. My marriage didn't return to what it was before. It became something different. Smaller in some ways, deeper in others. We talk more now, but about simpler things. The weather, work, movies. Sometimes the past slips into conversation like a shadow crossing the floor. And we pause, acknowledge it, and move on. It's not avoidance. It's understanding. Caleb and I have learned that love isn't measured by grand gestures or constant certainty. It's measured by endurance. By the quiet choice to stay kind even when trust has to be rebuilt one brick at a time. Some nights, when we sit on the porch, I catch him looking at me with that same half-smile he used to wear when we were younger. I used to wonder what he was thinking. Now I don't ask. Some things don't need to be said anymore. They're understood in the stillness. Emma is thriving. She doesn't know the full story, only that there was a difficult time, and that her parents worked through it together. I've decided she doesn't need to know the rest. Not every truth is meant to be handed down. Some are meant to stay quietly between the people who lived them, buried under forgiveness and understanding. Sometimes when I watch her laugh, I think about how close I came to letting a lie destroy not just my marriage, but her faith in family itself. That thought used to fill me with guilt. Now, it fills me with gratitude because I got the chance to rebuild before it was too late. I've changed in ways I didn't expect. I used to define myself through relationships. As a wife, as a mother, as a friend. Those titles still mean something, but they're not the whole of me anymore. Now I find peace in smaller, quieter things. Long walks at dawn. Coffee on the balcony. The smell of rain before it falls. The sound of my own laughter returning slowly, like a song I'd forgotten the words to. I've learned that survival isn't dramatic. It's not about roaring back stronger. It's about learning to stand still without collapsing. It's about saying, I'm here, even when the world expects you to disappear. A few weeks ago, I ran into someone who knew both Lila and me from years ago. We chatted politely, the weather, work, life. And then she said, I don't see Lila around much anymore. You two used to be so close. Smiled. We were once. People change. She nodded. You seem happier. I didn't know what to say to that. Happier isn't the right word. I'm quieter, more aware, maybe even a little wiser. But happiness feels too light for what I carry now. I've learned that peace isn't always joyful. Sometimes it's solemn, a calm that comes after the fire, when you're standing in the ashes and realize you survived. That night, after the encounter, I sat by the window and watched the stars. Caleb was reading in the other room. The house bathed in that tender silence I used to mistake for emptiness. Now I know it's something else, safety. I thought about everything that had happened. The lie, the distance, the slow, aching return to ourselves. And I realized that the woman I was before it all, she's gone. But I don't miss her. She needed to believe that love was fragile, that peace depended on perfection. I've outgrown that. Now I know love isn't fragile. It's resilient. It bends, it cracks, it burns. And if it's real, it still finds a way to breathe. Before I went to bed, I opened my old journal. The pages were filled with chaos. Grief, disbelief, anger, shame. The map of a mind trying to find its way home. I took a pen and added one final entry. Healing isn't about forgetting what broke you. It's about remembering without pain, forgiving without fear, and loving without needing proof. I closed the journal, tied the ribbon around it, and placed it on the shelf beside the framed photo from the lake. The one where we weren't perfect, but we were together. Then I turned off the light. The dark didn't scare me anymore. Just felt like rest. Click subscribe for the next life story.